It's late. And if you're watching this video when I'm recording it around 11 p.m. on a Monday night, it's probably because you, like me, have seen all the news saying that it is the biggest thing that has happened. The president-elect of the United States announced on social media that he planned on putting a 25% tariff on all Canadian and Mexican goods coming into the US. Obviously, this is a huge deal, but I want to talk about what it means for investors, my personal thoughts, and I'm going to do it in just a quick, easy chat with you. No cuts, no editing. Welcome back. This is Golden Arch Investing. My name is Liam. Like I said, it's 11 p.m. at night, so this is a single take video here just to chat a little bit and to sort of calm everyone down about all the big news happening in Canada today. So let's start off just by talking about the facts. What exactly is it that the new administration plans or has announced that they plan on doing? Well, they say that thanks to illegal immigration moving into the United States from places like in specifically our case, Canada, they are going to impose a penalty of 25% on all products from this country until our government stops these people from crossing into the United States. If you're not sure what people, what crossing, what exactly is going on, I don't want to go into too much detail, but it has been a big deal over the last little while in the Canadian media because people were worried about this exact thing happening. Basically, Canada's rules on certain groups of people are a lot laxer or easier than the United States. And so those people think, hey, okay, I'm going to fly into a place like Montreal. And then it's like a 2-hour bus ride down to the US border at a point where there's nobody stopping you. It's really easy for people actually to fly to Canada, cross into the US. And a lot of these people end up just sort of slipping through and the Americans don't catch them. But they have caught certain people who they claim are part of all sorts of organizations who are dangerous or bad people who are planning on doing dangerous things. And they say, hey, Canada, what's the deal? Well, it looks like the ante has been upped and Canada really needs to respond or face serious sanctions. Now, in the case that these tariffs do come into play, obviously it's going to be seriously damaging for all sorts of people on both sides of the relationship. I'm not going to speak for Mexico right now because I'm a Canadian and I don't have that sort of detailed knowledge of exactly how Mexico's economy is related to the US economy, or even honestly how Mexico's economy is related to ours in Canada. But I do know that there's some key parts of the US economy that are probably not looking forward to these tariffs. The one that I talk about a lot on here, energy. There's a huge amount of Canadian crude oil being shipped directly in pipelines down to Texas, where it's processed on the Gulf Coast and shipped, either into the United States or out to the export markets. Now, it's not quite as easy as you might think for those producers to simply cut off the pipeline to Canada and then take cheaper American products and refine those, because those refineries themselves are actually made for Canadian crude specifically. It would just be a giant pain. So those companies don't want it. There's also the auto industry. As somebody who grew up in Ontario, I know quite well just how tied together the Canadian and American auto industries are. Pieces of cars and the whole of the car itself crosses the border a number of times before the car is completed. So a certain part will be made in one country, moved to the other, added to something, moved to the other, added to something, moved to the other, assembled, so on and so forth. So all these big auto brands are probably not happy looking at, oh my God, this might happen. There's also some other things. Lumber has been a sore spot for both countries. Food, especially dairy products, has been a sore spot for both countries. Lots of people on both sides don't want to be hurt by these tariffs. But this isn't an economics channel. I don't know in great detail to the level that I'd be comfortable talking about exactly what industries can survive, can't survive, who's going to be the most impacted. But when we're talking about this as an investing channel, there's some key impacts that we need to think about. And there's going to be some important decisions we make regarding our Canadian stock portfolios based on the potential of these tariffs. The first thing, the Canadian dollar. I've got it on the screen right here. We lost what, 2 cents maybe today in value on the Canadian dollar compared to the American dollar. Now, 2 cents, not a huge deal, but in one day, that's pretty dramatic. And there's potential for the Canadian dollar to continue to weaken. That means our purchasing power is lower. So as a Canadian investor who does occasionally buy American stocks, I can buy fewer stocks, even if the price remains the same. That sucks. As a Canadian who earns a wage in Canadian dollars, that sucks. However, it's positive for some exporting Canadian companies. And on a normal sort of occasion, some of those companies might be cheering for this, cheering for a weaker Canadian dollar, because it makes their products much more incentivized, attractive to international buyers. Problem is, most of those people are selling directly to the United States, and those American companies probably aren't looking for Canadian products to acquire or make new contracts to acquire right now. That's sort of the second thing I want to talk about. Even though these tariffs may or may not be put into place, depending on what happens, if Canada satisfies the demands of the new American administration or not, American companies probably aren't about to sign new contracts to buy Canadian goods. They would rather get it at home or from a country that they don't fear is going to have a tariff on them in the near future. Canadian companies are also put in a tough decision. If you're a Canadian company and you export to the United States and you have no idea if your products are about to have a 25% tariff slapped on them at the American border, you're going to have to make some serious financial decisions. You might have to be worried about the viability of your company. There are some companies out there, and I'm not talking just mom and pop shops, but like actual listed important Canadian firms that may need to make some serious drastic maneuvers right now to survive the potential of tariffs, regardless of if they happen. So that could lead some companies to seriously cutting things like workforce or cutting things like dividends or whatever decisions management makes in the specific company's case probably isn't going to be beneficial for people who hold those stocks. There's also the question of overall investment in Canada. If you're an American or an American bank, sorry, I had to cut there. I said I wouldn't, but I ended up having to do it anyways. But if you're an American bank who had to decide if you want to buy a Canadian company or an American one, and this Canadian one has the boogeyman of tariffs and the American one doesn't, well, it's a pretty obvious choice. So what am I going to do? Well, there's a couple key things that I think are important. My first thing, I need to have cash on the side. I just need to. In my Canadian portfolio specifically, and luckily for me, American stocks are flying. Small cap US listed stocks are having some of the most fun I have seen since 2021. And honestly, that might be an interesting video all in itself. But I need to have money on the side because tomorrow morning we might see Canadian companies down 2 to 10 to more percent, depending on what company, what business they do with the US, how much people think their specific industry might get saved, etc., etc. We're also going to see some serious volatility in the near future. If it looks like the Canadian government is going to make the American administration happy, well, maybe we're okay. But if it looks like the Canadian government's not, and that the Americans are going to use these tariffs, this threat, as a big bargaining chip when we end up at the negotiating table, we might be in trouble. We also might see more, again, I have my screen up right here, we might see more talk like what we've seen from the premiers of Ontario and Alberta about maybe we try to single ourselves out as not like Mexico. So we can argue that our relationship is closer, or some of our industries are more important and we're more maybe culturally similar to America, right? Whatever it is that Team Canada can do to convince the US that this is not in their best interest. I don't know the answer. And importantly, right now, neither does the market. No matter how influential the people who talk on CBC or on CNBC sound or are, they don't actually know exactly what's going to happen because nobody does. And so we're going to see volatility, and that can either be an opportunity or a trap. If you panic and you sell now, well, maybe you dodge an economic recession and a terrible, difficult 10 years for the Canadian economy, Or maybe you jumped off the boat before things got back to normal. I don't know. I don't know what exactly is going to happen. And so my plan, I'm going to have money on the side. I'm going to strategically buy companies that I think will outperform regardless. I'm going to be thoughtful about how exactly I allocate resources. And if we end up in a position where these tariffs do get applied to everything we export and the economy is hit hard, well, I'm going to continue to slowly dollar cost average into these companies because I do believe that in the long run, Canada will be okay. Our economy will recover. Things will work themselves out. The Americans are our brothers. We will figure this out. Even if we're butting heads right now, we'll figure things out. I strongly believe that, and that has been my investing mentality. And when I look at scary news like this, I think it's important that as investors, we take a deep breath and we recognize that nobody knows what's going to happen, no matter who they are or how important they sound, and that we have to make the best decision for us. And I recognize that my best decision might not be yours, because a lot of people who are Canadians who are investing money, thinking about retirement or, their kids' education or trying to buy a house, they're going to be impacted. So am I. We all are, depending on if we trade with the US with tariffs or without tariffs. All of us will be impacted in one way or another, even if it just comes down to our dollar being worth less. So we should pay attention, but we shouldn't panic. We should take a deep breath, evaluate our best options, and decide what works for us. Now, if you have any sort of comments, you think you've seen something that I've missed here, or something that I don't, right? If you've seen, maybe there's other news stories that I missed today, and you want to sort of help me out here, please leave a comment down below. Also, if you think there are any specific opportunities that are going to see overreactions in the near future based on this news that might be okay regardless, also let me know. That's something I'm going to be searching out in the near future. Again, like I said, this is a one take with one cut there because I was sneezing. But I really hope you appreciated the video. And if you made it this far, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. We talk about investing in Canada every week on this channel, and it seems like that conversation is about to get a lot more complicated. With that being said, I hope I see you in the next video.